I'm Father Mitch Paquin, and welcome to Ewtn Live, where we bring you guests from around the world. Tonight, we want to jump into the deep end of the pool, so to speak, because we are going to discuss baptism and how water is seen throughout the scripture as a symbol of life, also a symbol of death, symbol of freedom, and a sign of purity. We'll also talk about how the sacrament of baptism goes beyond just a rite of initiation, and it becomes a lifelong journey of salvific conversion. Our guest this evening is a Dominican priest and an associate professor of theology at Providence College up in the great state of Rhode Island. He's also the author of a new book called The Bible and Baptism, the Fountain of Salvation. So please welcome from the Order of Preachers, Father Isaac Augustine Morales. Father Isaac, welcome. Good to have you here with us.
It's good to be with you.
Yeah.
Little Dominican Jesuit ecumenism, right?
That's it, just open-mindedness. And I discovered in our conversation earlier today that you're from a suburb just outside of Chicago, my
That's
hometown.
right.
It's good to have you here, but neither of us are over there at this point. We're just doing the work that Jesus sends us to do wherever he sends us.
Indeed.
Now, this book that you have is part of a series on the sacraments that is put up by Baker Press, a good press. Mm-hmm. Did you volunteer to do this book on baptism, or did they ask you?
They asked me. So Tim Gray, the president of the Augustine Institute, and John Seahorn, who also teaches there, they're the general editors for the series. And they asked me about 7 years ago now to to contribute this volume. I had written a couple of articles on baptism in the letters of Paul, and they weren't too offended by them, so they asked me to do something on the whole Bible.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, two aspects of the way you approach this. One, you begin with the many ways that baptism is prefigured in the Old Testament.
Yep, that's right.
And then you also show what is said about it in the New Testament. Let's start off. A lot of people are not always aware of how the Old Testament prefigures so much, and the depth of the prefiguring. And that's one of the things I liked about your book.
Thank you.
You bring out a real depth of these figures for the Old Testament. One of them that you talk about, those I've mentioned the four categories.
Yeah.
Life, water is a symbol of death as well.
Yep.
And let's start off with those first.
Those two? Great. Yeah, and I came to those through the New Testament, because Paul himself talks about baptism as being both a dying with Christ and a rising with him to new life.
Right.
And it's sad that a lot of people don't know about the prefigurations in the Old Testament today, because in the early period up through the medieval period, this was just common. If you look at the fathers and their teaching on, if they're giving catechetical instruction or mystagogy, this instruction after baptism, they'll draw on the Old Testament. And life and death are two very, very important themes associated with water in the Old Testament. And so to give you one example of life, the fifth day of creation, right? The waters teem with life. They're swarming with creatures, right? With fish and other things. And Ambrose, for example, St. Ambrose used that to talk about how water is this source of life on the natural level, and then on the supernatural level, when it's combined with the words that our Lord gave us for baptism, then it gives us supernatural life. With respect to death, there's so many things that you could choose from. One of the most obvious ones, though, goes back to the New Testament itself, because in the first letter of Peter, Peter appeals to the story of Noah to talk about baptism, how Noah and his family were saved through the waters of the flood, which brought a lot of destruction, but he and his family were saved. And he says, correspondingly, baptism saves you.
But, you know, he was saved on the ark
Yes.
Well, everybody else
Yes.
was killed.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, this major, and so there's that sense of baptism putting sin to death. I mean, people died because they were so sinful.
Right.
That's the point in the story of the flood.
Right.
But, you know, we look not to killing other people,
Right.
but for the sinfulness within us, original sin and actual sin if we're adults,
Right.
so that it dies and we come to new life. You also spent a good deal of time on the same theme found in the book of Exodus. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Specifically with respect to death?
Yeah.
Yes. So the classic example of that is, of course, the story of the crossing of the Red Sea. Right? The Israelites pass through the Red Sea, the Egyptians come after them, and the waters fall back over the Egyptians and kill them. And some of the church fathers, like St. Augustine, uses that as an image for the putting to death of our sins. Right? That's what dies in us in baptism as we pass through the waters.
Because you know, the Egyptians followed into the sea to kill Israel. They had a murderous intent. They had murderous intent from the time they were killing the infant boys. And all the way until they tried to wipe out all of Israel by chasing them into the sea. But those forces of death and sin were the ones destroying the waters of the sea.
As well as enslavement, because that's another theme that water is very closely associated with in the Old Testament, because of the story of the Exodus. That so the Egyptians had murderous intent. They also had intent of re-enslaving the Israelites. They said, we can't let them go. Who's going to build our pyramids and such, right?
Well, they didn't build pyramids. You got to get your Old Testament history. Pyramids were done for 1,500 years, but they were building cities. That they were building.
And so the forces of enslavement are also drowned in the waters of baptism.
The other episode that shows up in the New Testament and is associating water with death is the story of Jonah.
Right. And that's actually perhaps one of the best examples to illustrate the point that we do, in a sense, actually die in baptism. Obviously not in the biological sense, but Jonah is a good figure for that because he goes down into the waters and he's swallowed up by this big fish, right? And he talks about having gone down into the pit. And you know better than I do that the Hebrew word for pit is also the word for the realm of the dead, right? And then when he's spit back out onto the land, he has come back from the dead.
Right. Exactly. So this is, you know, a set of images about life and death, and that baptism, again, as Paul writes in Romans 6, that you die in baptism so that you can rise again. That life and death are part of the movement of baptism. What about cleansing?
Yes, so purity. Purity is a very interesting topic in the Old Testament because it doesn't necessarily have, it doesn't always have to do with the moral life. Purity is a ritual category for the ancient Israelites. And there were natural things that you couldn't avoid, and some of which were even commendable, that would prevent somebody from, for a time at least, from going to worship at the temple. An obvious example is childbirth, right? There's nothing wrong with childbirth. In fact, it's commended to the Israelites, be fruitful and multiply. But when a woman gave birth, she would be impure for a time, right? But then she would have to go through these rituals of being washed with water. And there were other aspects to the ritual. And once that was performed and the time had passed, then she could re-enter the temple and offer worship.
And the same thing was true with the various emissions of men and women that they knew were linked to giving birth. They may not have had the detailed scientific knowledge we have today, but they knew that these are linked to giving birth. And they were considered unclean. I just had a call about this on the radio this afternoon, and I explained how the idea of unclean, like you say, has nothing to do with immorality. It's about being being sacred and part of God's realm. So an example I like to use, Jewish people are not allowed to touch a scroll of the Bible.
Right.
They can touch a printed Bible, that's no problem. But if it's a handwritten scroll, it makes you unclean to touch the actual page. Use a stick to read so you don't touch it, because it's sacred. And the same thing with these areas of life.
Yep.
That's God's holy realm of giving life, whether at birth or in the other missions associated with reproduction. This is about God's realm of life and is a sacred realm, but we become unclean touching his realm. So it's a very different sense than we would think of. But
Yeah, it's totally
you have to
different mentality.
understand their mentality, their world.
Yep. But that wasn't the only aspect of impurity in the ancient world. You do see in the Old Testament also a moral understanding, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
You see this especially in the prophets. Isaiah, chastises the people for mistreating the poor and the orphan and the widows, and he says, "Cleanse yourselves." And that's the aspect that's really carried into the New Testament understanding of baptism. You see both kinds of purity in the New Testament. The ritual one you see more often in the Gospels, right? When, for example, when the leper, so-called, he didn't really have leprosy, he had another kind of skin disease, but it was...
Not Hansen's disease.
No, but it was something that rendered him impure. And it's interesting, when he comes to Jesus, he doesn't say, "Lord, if you will, you can heal me." He says, "Lord, if you will, you can make me clean." That is, you can render me fit once again to worship God.
Right.
And there are other stories like that in the Gospels. But when you get to the letters and talking about baptism, there Paul and other writers focus more on the ethical, for lack of a better word, the notion of sin making us impure.
And that's another aspect. So you've got these aspects from the Old Testament that Jesus and the apostles constantly go back to as a great source for understanding baptism.
Yeah, well, some of them they do, and some of them they don't. So, a lot of these we get from the church fathers, who basically just did what they saw happening a little bit in the New Testament. So 1 Peter with Noah, or Paul talks about the Israelites being baptized into Moses. And so because they see Scripture as one book, which it is from a certain perspective, then they said, well, we can keep doing this and see what we can find. And it gives you that. So that was part of the purpose of this whole book, was to give us a much fuller, richer appreciation of baptism.
Yeah, and I think that you really do open that up. That I think is very successful. One of the most important lines to address situations we have today is the line in the first epistle of St. Peter, chapter 3, where after he talks about the flood as a type of baptism, he says there, baptism now saves you. Nun sodze humas. This saves. This is very, one of the risks I am concerned about is too many people think of baptism as merely something, a ritual to help you be part of the church. I've heard theologians even say that, because they don't believe in original sin. And others that don't believe that baptism takes away sin, they just say it's part of getting into the community.
Right.
But that's not what is going on. When he writes there, baptism now saves you, and doesn't say you are saved by baptism. It's in the process. And I think that's another element you bring out. There's a dynamic act of salvation that starts in baptism, but it's a continuing, power that baptism has in a person's life. Talk a bit about that.
Yes, so I like to speak of baptism as initiating us into a pattern of life, into the pattern of the Christian life, which is the pattern of Christ's life. And I wouldn't want to say that baptism doesn't join us to the community. It does do that, but we shouldn't reduce it to that. And so I go to Paul especially. For Paul, Romans 6, which you mentioned, Paul says that as many of you as were baptized into Christ Jesus were baptized into his death. We were buried with him through baptism into his death. Incidentally, that's why in the early church they would actually submerge the people under the water. It was symbolizing going down into the tomb with Jesus and then coming out to new life. But
And in the Eastern churches, the Byzantine churches, they still do that. They put the child completely in the water to have
very
that
quickly, so as not to have any mishaps. But yes, which I'm in favor of that. And if you read Paul's letters, that pattern that he describes in baptism is the pattern of his life. It's an ongoing cycle. We have joys, we have trials, we have sorrow, we have triumphs, right? In this ongoing cycle of being more and more perfectly conformed to Christ. Right? And so baptism initiates us into that life. And most importantly, unites us to Christ, who, in a sense, relives that in and through and for us.
Yeah. Well, he talks in Galatians, I think that was part of your dissertation.
That's right.
That it is no longer I who lives, but Christ who lives in me. And it's Christ crucified. That is what he emphasizes. So we really, our baptism is having us live, not only get baptized into his death so we can rise with him, but it's a way of life of dying to ourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
That Jesus talks about as well.
Yeah, and Paul describes it as dying as our old human being, the old anthropos, from which you get anthropology, right? That's the old human being who is weakened by sin and corrupted, is put to death in baptism. And as a result, for Paul, we're no longer slaves to sin. So this brings it back to the story of the Exodus, that we've been liberated from sin, which is not to say that we never slip up, but we don't have to anymore. It is possible for us to avoid sin thanks to this gift of baptism.
That, the power of the grace we receive at baptism is working within us to constantly empower us to overcome sin and to do what is good and what is right. That's a very important aspect. And again, Paul does say in 1 Corinthians 12 that when you were baptized into the body of Christ.
Yes.
This is, again, I hope I didn't come across as saying it doesn't incorporate us to the church. It does.
No, of course.
But again, it's not only that.
Right.
This is a key part. This is also part of that living out baptism for.
Yes, especially because I love that chapter of 1 Corinthians because it gives us a great image of unity that is not just like the blob. It's not that we're all just absorbed into this, well, blob for lack of a better word. My fingers do one thing, my toes do another, my heart does another. I wouldn't want to get rid of any of them. They are all pretty handy. And similarly in the body of Christ, some people are fingers, some people are knees, but they're all united and ideally working together to glorify God.
Yes. And this is a very important part of understanding the power of baptism and it conforming us to Jesus Christ and uniting us with him, uniting us with his mystical body and with him personally. Yes. These are all aspects. When one of the things I've heard many times on this program and other programs as well is, what do I do when my kids don't want to baptize my grandchildren? That I raised them in the church and they don't want to bring them for baptism. Should I baptize them on the sly myself? What do I do?
Yeah,
what would you say to them?
I would say first, that's a very difficult situation, and I feel for anybody in that situation. I know it must be heartbreaking. I would not advise baptism on the sly unless it was a case of an emergency. In the case of an emergency, like if the child seems like he or she is going to die, then yes, you could do an emergency baptism. But in the meantime, I think what you need to do is pray for your children and for your grandchildren that the Lord would move their hearts and for your children, bring them back to the faith so that they would bring their children to baptism.
But see, that's also one of the things I thought about while reading your book. For those grandparents who cannot convince their children to baptize the grandchildren, one of the issues I sense is that those parents of the unbaptized child don't understand the power of baptism. I think they look at it as just, oh, it's just a ceremony and it makes mom and dad happy, but, I'll wait till the kids are 18.
Right.
But, they're not training them, they're training the little kids in the faith. They're like, are they going to act like good U.S. citizens if you just sort of leave them there? Or maybe they'll just go to China and want to become a Chinese citizen. I mean, is that how you raise them? Or do you train them in the truths of the faith and the deep meaning of baptism?
Yeah, well, all Christian parents have that responsibility to raise their children in the faith. And so it's tragic when parents don't do that for whatever reason. But usually when they don't, it's because they frankly have lost the faith themselves. And so in that case, I think the things that in this case, the grandparents can do is to pray for their children. Pray fervently and persistently for their children. And if opportunities arise to say something in charity and patiently, then absolutely you should do that. But there's never a justification to baptize the child on the sly. Again, unless it's a case of an emergency.
Yeah, the problem with baptizing them on the sly and just is that you can't guarantee that the parents will raise them in the life that baptism brings out in us.
That's right.
That they're given this powerful baptism and not trained in the rest of the faith.
Yeah, and I believe
that's not fair to the child.
I believe the language in canon law is that there has to be a founded hope that the child will be instructed, catechized. And if grandma's baptizing little Lulu, but not going to do anything about the catechesis, then that's, in some ways, it's a disservice to little Lulu.
Yes. No, they have to do that. Another issue, and this is not something that you focused on, but you're well aware of from our conversations. We have been going through a period where clergy sometimes try to make the formula of baptism a little more politically correct. And once they do that, it opens up a wide variety of errors.
And problems.
And problems.
Major problems.
I can remember back in the 70s already, some people were saying, well, we'll just baptize in the name of the Creator, the Redeemer, and the Sanctifier. Is that valid?
Nope, that's not valid. Those aren't the words the Lord gave us. Those aren't the words that the church endorses or commends to us for baptism. You need to use the formula that the church gives us. And you can't change the pronouns either. We were speaking earlier today.
Yeah, give me an example.
Well, there was that priest in Michigan who saw a video of his baptism. I imagine if he was a priest ordained recently, then it must have been in the maybe early 90s or late 80s. And I think it was a deacon who baptized him, and he said, "We baptize you in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit." And no, it's not. It's not a communal act. It's one person baptizing another. And so that poor man had to receive all of his sacraments I would say again, but he wasn't receiving them again. He was receiving them for the first time, ironically.
That's not a valid baptism form. It's just like at Mass. We priests don't say, this is our body. No.
Nope.
The priest, even if there are multiple priests, each of us says, though we say it together, we say, this is my body.
Yeah.
And this is the cup of my blood, that, or I absolve you.
Yes.
We can't change these formulae. It's not our sacraments.
Right.
Jesus established these sacraments. They're his, not our plaything. And when I know there's a couple of denominations, some of the more old-time denominations, the Reformation period denominations, where they have officially offered 9 different possible formulae for baptism, none of which are valid. You know, for instance, when you say, baptize in the name of the Redeemer, the Sanctifier, and the Creator, the Creator, Redeemer, Sanctifier, those aren't persons.
Right.
Those are functions.
Those are functions that each of the persons of the Trinity performs.
All 3 persons
exactly.
are
That's
creator.
what I'm saying. Each, yes, exactly.
All 3 redeem.
Right.
All 3 sanctify.
Yep.
You can't, separate those functions from all 3 persons.
Yep.
This is heresy on lots of levels. And we don't want to baptize heretically.
No, and I remember when I was in priestly formation in one of my classes, they gave us a list of certain denominations and even things that you wouldn't necessarily call denominations that use formulae that are not acceptable, because you need to know if you're receiving somebody into the church, do we need to baptize this person or not?
We recognize the valid baptisms of the other Christian churches.
Of most Protestant denominations.
But if they officially change the formulae, we can't accept that, can we?
Nope.
We have to baptize them. We don't believe they're baptized.
Yeah, we don't even call it rebaptism. We call it baptizing because they weren't baptized to begin with.
I've had to a person who was received in the church, but had been baptized in a church that baptized only in the name of Jesus, not the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Right.
I had to baptize her.
Right.
Even though she'd been practicing the Catholic faith. Had to give her confirmation, that none of that was done validly. These are important issues because what you write about, this ongoing relationship and the validity of this. So this is a very important thing. I want to recommend your book. It's called The Bible and Baptism, The Fountain of Salvation. It's written by our guest, Father Isaac Augustine Morales, OP, the Order of Preachers. And it is item number 61785. 61785. You can get it at ewtnrc.com, our religious catalog. And if you have a situation where family members are not interested in baptizing, get this book, read it, pray over it, not just study, but enter into the biblical teaching of this book so that you can be a means of evangelizing your family about the fullness and the truth of baptism. This would be a great gift. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Want to get your questions and your comments, so please stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about the rich biblical teaching, the preparation in the Old Testament, and what we see taught in the New Testament in regard to baptism. And we are with Father Isaac Morales, who wrote this book. And are you ready for some questions?
Sure.
Let's start off with Thomas in the great state of Tennessee. Thomas, what can we do for you
Father.
today?
How are you, Father?
Fine. What's up?
Well, I got a question for Father Isaac Morales. How or why did baptism evolve from full immersion at the adolescent age or adult age to infant age?
Okay, that's a good question. I have a very brief appendix in the book about infant baptism, and there are hints, even in the New Testament, and certainly by about the middle of the 2nd century, that they were already practicing infant baptism. As Father Mitch pointed out, in the East, they still immerse babies, all right? So that really hasn't fallen out of practice, at least in one side of the church.
And we can
Yes.
use immersion. There's
Yeah.
nothing, we can totally immerse a person,
Yes.
or we can pour water.
Yep.
We don't usually sprinkle them, but in
We don't,
emergency
but
we
in
can.
theory it's possible.
Yeah.
I forget, there's a church father who talks about, you can immerse or you can just pour. I think it's maybe Justin Martyr who talks about that. But at any rate, I don't know exactly when in history the shift happened. If I had to guess, I wouldn't guess at when it happened, but I would guess that it was for concerns about safety, with babies, plunging them into the water. It can be a little bit risky. But you likely had infant baptism pretty much from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not explicit in the New Testament, but there are hints there. And the fact that at the latest, by the middle of the 2nd century, you have allusions to it, I think it was already a practice by then, certainly.
And there is I don't know if you've come across it, but there was a debate that was done between 2 German scholars on infant baptism. Alland and I forget another New Testament guy. But in this debate, it was a fascinating debate. Alland lost because he was saying only adult baptism. But we don't see that Christian parents of children postponed baptism. There was, when you look at the apostolic constitutions, it says explicitly there, this is in the early 3rd century, that we baptize the infants who cannot speak first, then the children who can speak, and then the adults. So they were baptizing infants, and then in 250 or so, 251, there was a synod in Carthage. And one of the bishops said we should baptize on the 8th day to show the parallel to circumcision that the Jewish people do on the 8th day, using Colossians chapter 2 as a reason to make that connection. The bishops voted unanimously against it. Even he voted against it. The reasoning was, we never wait that long. We baptize on the day of birth or the next day. The earliest example, it was Joachim Jeremias. He was the other one.
Yeah.
Joachim Jeremias versus Alland. And Joachim Jeremias wrote this wonderful history. He points out that the first time we hear of Christians postponing the baptism of their baby to adulthood was for somebody born in 327 AD. Prior to that, we have no examples. You even see that St. Justin Martyr says he knew some women who were baptized by the apostles. He wrote that in 150 AD. So if they were baptized by the apostles, who had died by 65 or so, it means that they'd been baptized as infants too by the apostles.
Yeah.
That was part of the logic. So we see for a period of about 200 years, beginning during the reign of Constantine, that they started to postpone baptism. And
the classic example of that is St. Augustine.
St. Augustine,
of course.
but
Yeah.
St. Gregory, and this a number of St. Ambrose, a number of people.
Right.
But the other thing with that is why? You could only go to confession once in your life.
Right.
And they were afraid that some of their boys would sow wild oats. And they wanted to postpone baptism so they could get baptized to wash away those sins, like St. Jerome. He lived a lot of wild oats. And then he got baptized at 19. And then you still, if you made a mistake, you still had the one confession card left. And later on, the Irish, God bless the Irish, they started saying, no, you can go to confession more often. And they started hearing, and then people went back to baptizing infants when they said you could have more than one confession in your life.
Yeah. Thanks be to God.
Yes, yes. All right, does that help?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
We have another question from our studio audience, though. Ma'am, where are you from?
Hi, I'm Gloria from Michigan.
Great, good to have you here. And your question?
I have a daughter, my youngest daughter, who was baptized in the Catholic Church, into the Catholic Church, and in her 20s or early 20s, she became involved with the evangelical life church, non-denominational church. She was baptized, and the pastor there knew she was baptized Catholic. She was baptized again, immersion, there on the stage. And it has weighed on me because I also took a course in certification in Catholic theology and learned that I felt like was grave. It was a grave error. So this is weighing on me, and I'm asking for your input.
Yeah, it's always difficult when a loved one leaves the faith, even just for another Christian denomination. I would say that's the biggest source of grief, though, because it's not surprising that if they join a denomination that doesn't believe in infant baptism, and that's kind of how their beliefs lead them, then they're obviously going to think, well, that one didn't count because you can't baptize infants. So it's heartbreaking, but I think the most important thing you can do for your daughter is just to pray for her that she will come back to the faith and trust that the Lord wants to bring her back and will in His own good time.
She's adrift now, right? She doesn't have.
Yep.
She's not there. She's not here. Just
Right.
adrift. So.
Yeah, and I think in some of those situations, you know, they sometimes think that it's okay to come and receive communion, say if they're at a wedding or something, and we should let them know, no, that's not okay. You have to make your decision. If you're Catholic and live our faith, of course you can receive the other sacraments, but not if you don't.
Yeah.
We have another call. We have Stephen online. Stephen, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Oregon. How you doing, Father Packer?
Fine, thank you, sir. What's your question for Father?
My question is, as a baby, you're baptized for original sin is absolved, but many Protestants believe in baptism as an adult, you're born again. What baptism is the right way to go?
Is the question whether it's adult or infant baptism?
Yes, yeah. Well, is it more correct to baptize as an infant or to wait until adulthood the way a number of denominations do?
Well, I mean, neither is necessarily incorrect, I would say. I mean, we do have the examples in that period in the early church when some people delayed, but I think the ideal, the best is certainly Christian parents have an obligation to bring their children to the sacrament of baptism, and not just to bring them to the sacrament, but then also to instruct them in the faith, because it's really, as I said earlier, it's doing them a disservice if you baptize, but then you don't really teach them anything. So I think, yes, certainly for Catholics, for Catholic parents, they should not wait till their children are adults. You know, it's funny because parents will often say, well, I want them to grow up and make their own decision. Just like they decided where they were born, what language they would learn, whether they would learn math, whether they would learn how to read. There are so many things that that parents rightly don't give their children a choice about. And those things are important, but being in communion with God is even more important than all of that. All right, so I think parents, Christian parents, certainly have a duty to bring their children to the waters of baptism, and the sooner the better.
Yeah, you wouldn't stop your child from speaking English.
We want you to decide which language you think is the right one.
So we're not going to speak any language to you until you're an adult.
Yeah.
Does that even make sense? And in fact, if you don't teach them to speak at those early months, their ability to ever learn is impaired later on. Yeah. That happened to a number of children they call feral children who were raised out in the woods
or whatever.
They don't learn to speak as infants, and they have trouble some of them never can learn.
Yeah.
You know, well, this is something that would be a good model. Yeah. Maybe they will want to learn Chinese someday, and maybe they prefer speaking Arabic. Don't know, but they'll decide that later on. But you need to teach them to speak English, or they will never learn any language.
Yeah,
that's not a bad parallel for the scripture. And something Saint Ignatius told our guys who were the theologians at the Council of Trent when they weren't working in the council, to go and teach children. And one of the things about infant baptism is that it gives them an instinct for the faith.
Yep.
There's a grace that is where it's not just about their decision. The grace of God is working in them.
Yes, absolutely.
And because of that grace, ask teachers of first and second graders and how the kids just soak in the faith. That instinct of faith really is operative in them.
Yep.
That's what this is a great grace that is operative, and not just their decision. It's the
God
key.
at work in them.
This is key to understand the grace of God operative in baptism.
Yeah, some of our sisters teach at the parochial school across the street from Providence College, and one of them, who was there for a number of years, did a phenomenal job with catechesis. And I remember one of my colleagues was at the church one evening. They were having a holy hour, and all these little second graders were just sitting quietly in the front pew, just adoring Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament. We underestimate what kind of a capacity children have for that kind of thing. There's also that beautiful story from, Elizabeth Anscombe's piece on transubstantiation?
No.
Oh, it's a short little 5-page essay on transubstantiation. She begins by saying that a child can be taught what transubstantiation is.
Sure.
Not, of course, using the jargony word, but just bring them to the church, and when the priest, don't bother them too much during the liturgy, but when the priest is saying the words of consecration, say, look, the priest is saying what Jesus said, and now it's becoming the body of Christ, all right? And then the same thing with the chalice. And she says, she saw this happen. It was probably her own child. She went up to receive communion, and when she came back, the child said, "Is he in you?" And she said, "Yes." And the child prostrated himself before her.
Wow. Yeah, you're probably right. It probably was her own children. But that's something that I think we shouldn't underestimate. Again, in the late 60s and early 70s, times I remember better than you.
Much better.
But back then, it was, the attitude was, well, they can't really make a mature decision.
I can't make a mature decision.
And so they just had this existentialist philosophy about what a full decision really means and the meaning of life and all.
Right.
And what's better is to understand that faith develops in stages, and little kids have real faith. It's a child's faith,
Yep.
but they will grow from that to adult. And just let them grow up, but you don't have to
Right.
wait until they're an adult. That's not wise. With much of anything, you should teach them morals, teach them how to be a good citizen
Yeah.
early on.
Basic manners, just
Yes.
etiquette.
You know, you keep telling them, say, excuse me,
Please and thank you.
pass the potatoes. Not, give me the potatoes.
Right.
That didn't happen at Mr. and Mrs. Packer's house. And you train them again and again, because it doesn't always sink in
Right.
the first time. Again, as Mr. and Mrs. Packer used to complain, how come I have to tell you kids 10,000 times? But that's we just keep doing it. That's the education of children.
Yep. Yeah, and it's true in the faith just as it is in all these other areas.
Yeah.
Again, I really do think the analogy with language is a good one. Nobody would say, "Oh, let's let the child decide what language they're going to speak."
Yeah. No.
That's just foolish.
No. And this is something that, I mean, and again, I'm not opposed to offering children 2 or 3 languages at once.
Sure, of course.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
But, you have to teach them language. This meaning of baptism, again, I think some of these questions come because, the things that you bring out in your book are oftentimes missing in the catechesis
Yeah.
many adults have received. They have a very vague notion of baptism. That's
Yeah.
why I like your book.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to say this, but I actually came to a much, much deeper appreciation of my baptism through writing the book. I didn't really usually give it much of a second thought because I was baptized as an infant. I was there, but I wasn't there, conscious. But yeah, writing this book really helped me to appreciate it more deeply, and it gave me, I think Catholics have multiple opportunities to meditate on this gift. Every time you walk into a church, what do? You dip your fingers in the font and you cross yourself, right? That's supposed to be a reminder of your baptism. That's one of the reasons that we do it.
Yeah.
Right? And, or at the Easter Vigil every year, you have all these beautiful readings, many of which I talk about in my book, that are prefigurations of baptism. And at any baptism that you attend, right, the parents and the godparents make the vows if it's an infant. There's no reason you can't silently renew your own vows, baptismal vows, at that time.
Well, see, that's, and in the Roman rite of the Catholic Church, every Easter,
Yep.
at all the masses,
Right.
we renew our baptismal vows instead of saying the creed.
That's right. It's the question and answer.
It's the question the priest asks, do you renounce Satan? So you
Right.
can't say, well, it's not fair. I was baptized as a baby. I didn't know.
Right.
Every year of your life, you can renew that
Yep.
baptism and those baptismal vows
Right.
yourself
Yep.
as you go through each stage.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful practice because it's very ancient. That's how they did the creed. One of the ways that they did the creeds in the early centuries, particularly when people were being baptized. So it's a nice connection to the church throughout history and a reconnection to what we receive in baptism. Receive, but also are entrusted with, because it, as you pointed out at the beginning of the show, right? It's not a one-off thing. It's an initiation into a whole kind of life, a pattern of dying and rising with Christ, so that one day we can come to the fullness of life.
I, as a kid, I didn't know the date of my baptism. But when I entered the Society of Jesus, I had to get my a copy of my baptismal certificate, because that would be necessary before I get ordained, and my confirmation certificate as well. So that went to the parishes where
Right.
I'd
No, they
been.
keep great records of those things.
Every baptism is registered, and sometimes you go to Europe, it's hundreds of years back. You can trace your family that way.
Yeah.
But it turns out, I've always remembered my baptism date ever since then, and I still celebrate it every year.
That's great.
It ends up providentially being the same date as my entrance into the Jesuits.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So that my entrance date and my baptism anniversary are the same, just separated by 19 years.
Yeah, that's great.
It's not a bad idea to if you are married, you probably have a copy of your baptism record around.
Yep.
Go check that out.
You can always call the parish and get the date if you don't have it. Yeah, and I make a point of calling or texting or sending some message to my godchildren on the anniversary of their baptisms. I do it on their birthdays, but then also on the baptismal anniversary.
It's good for us to help with those kind of little customs,
Yep.
so that the remembrance of the importance of baptism becomes a little extra real. This is something that, one other thing, we typically, I think it was done for a little bit, but now today we're back to a more traditional practice of baptizing outside of Mass.
Right.
You can baptize during Mass, it's an option most of the time. Does that help folks with incorporating into the community, or do you see any effect?
Because I teach at a college, I don't do that many baptisms.
Yeah, right.
But my intuition would be that in some ways it's actually less necessary. I mean, it's a less obvious connection with the community if you do it outside of Mass. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's perfectly legitimate.
Yeah.
But yeah, historically, baptism the three sacraments of initiation typically went together, and they still do in the East, right?
Right.
They say
In
baptism,
Maronite
chrismation,
Church,
and
do.
Eucharist.
Exactly.
So you miss that aspect, but baptisms still take place in the church, often in the sanctuary. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just you do lose a little bit of the symbolism, perhaps, by doing it that way. But
one of the things we do in the Maronite Church is to process through the whole church with the baby after the baptism.
Yeah.
The parents will first give the baby to the priest and will place the baby on the altar.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And then after the baptism itself, we'll process throughout the whole church with the baby.
Yeah.
That has been baptized.
Well, that's fitting because one of the things that baptism does for us is it makes us into temples of God, the Holy Trinity, right? And so to process a baby that's just been baptized makes perfect sense because God is now dwelling within that child.
And there's something about, especially in a world like ours, where we see so many people so willing to destroy babies. And now the lives of children. We see so many children are being trafficked horribly. This reminds us of the dignity that God gives them. Again, I want to urge you to take a look at this book, especially if you have questions about baptism. It's called The Bible and Baptism, The Fountain of Salvation. It's by our guest, Father Isaac Augustine Morales, OP, and it is item number 61785, available at EWTN Religious Catalog, EWTNRC.com. Father, thank you very much for writing this book and for coming here to share some of these insights. And if you would join me in blessing our audience, may Almighty God bless you and keep you and cause His face to shine upon you and lead you in all of your ways by His peace. May God bless you, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. We can bring you guests like Father Morales and do this program and all of our other programs only because this network is brought to you by you. So we ask you to do as Mother Angelica have been inspired by our Lord, to please keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill. And if you do that, we'll be able to pay our bills too. Thank you, and God bless.